The most amazing, dynamic yet adaptable structures present in the human body are muscles. Just imagine how we beat the crap out of it at the gym, and the very next day, it is ready for more. Looking at this fantastic role, in today's video, we will cover the topic of how muscles adapt and how they become bigger and stronger. But wait, is exercise the only way muscles adapt? Definitely no, and this is what we are going to discover today. We are going to talk about the skeletal muscles today, which are attached to the skeleton. However, there are two other types of muscle tissues. Can you name them? If you can think of an answer, remember to post it in the comments section, and we are going to pin the correct option to the top. Now, coming back to what we started discussing initially, take a look at this kid. Look at the right upper arm, particularly the mucle. We call these biceps. Muscles are no doubt made up of hundreds to thousands of muscle cells. Look at it closely and see a string-like, or rather fiber-like cells making the whole muscle. These muscle fibers or muscle cells are able to contract. You can visualize the tendons attaching the muscle belly. When these cells contract, one attachment is more mobile, while the other behaves like an anchor. In the case of biceps, for instance, the anchor point is more up. When those fibers contract, we basically move the skeleton. Fast and slow twitch muscle fibers. Now recall the last time you exercised. If you haven't imagined it, what did you do? Endurance run, yoga, sports, or heavy weightlifting maybe? Depending on the activity you were involved in, you basically engaged different percentage of muscle fibers. Guess what? Although the whole muscle is made up of several muscle fibers, out of those total muscle fibers, some are classified as slow twitch and some are known as fast twitch muscle fibers. Both these types adapt differently that can be somewhat controlled by the type of activity or exercise you participate in. Now, while stimulating those muscle fibers via exercise and activity is one thing, but you should also make sure that your muscles and body receives vital vitamins, nutrients, and minerals to perform and recover well during any activity. Let's discuss these type of muscle fibers in detail. The amazing features of slow twitch muscle fibers. Slow twitch muscles fibers, also known as slow oxidative, or type 1, fibers have an amazing aerobic capacity. This means they use up oxygen to break down carbs, fats, and proteins to synthesize ATP, the energy present in the cells. As a matter of fact, our muscle cells burn ATP when exercising. Thus, it would be a good idea to have such a circumstance where our muscle fiber would make high amount of ATP, and these slow twitch cells are set to do this. Slow twitch fibers not only have a lot of capillaries, meaning a great blood supply to receive nutrients, but also have a high amount of iron-contained proteins known as myoglobin. Now, what are myoglobin? Myoglobin aids the binding and storage of oxygen with the muscle cells that it can be utilized to synthesize ATP. Now, since we are talking a lot about the supply of oxygen, let's take a look at its importance. Guess what? When cells utilize oxygen to make ATP, they can actually make 18 times more ATP per glucose molecule in comparison to when cells make ATP without oxygen. So in other words, we can make 36 ATP per glucose molecule with oxygen in contrast to 2 ATP per glucose molecule without oxygen. Now definitely you would say 36 is better, but what about its pros and cons? The pros and cons of slow twitch muscle fibers. Slow twitch muscle fibers have a small diameter, and hence they contract with less force and takes a lot of time to make ATP as compared to the fast twitch fiber cells. On the contrary, the slow twitch muscles fibers are highly resistant to fatigue during low intensity activities since there is a lot of time to synthesize high amounts of ATP aerobically. In other words, they help you pose for a longer duration during yoga and can keep you upright all day. It can even let you run for 26 miles during a marathon. Interesting, isn't it? These slow twitch muscle fibers let you excel in muscular endurance and hence adapt to consistent exercise and training intensities. There are several characteristics of these muscle fibers that change as they adapt. For instance, the number of capillaries they have increases, enabling them to deliver more oxygen and nutrients. Consequently, the myoglobin content rises and hence more oxygen gets minded to the muscle fiber. You can have more oxygen and make more ATP. The myoglobin content will go up. We can bind more oxygen within that muscle fiber, and the mitochondria will even increase in number as well as size, so we can process that oxygen and make more ATP. One other thing that's really cool is that the transporters on the outside of the muscle fiber membrane, or even on the mitochondrial membrane, will increase in number. So you can exchange things through the inside and outside of the cell, as well as in and out of the mitochondria. So you've essentially created this ability to get nutrients and utilize oxygen to make even more ATP slow-twitch muscle fibers, and that means more muscular endurance. But what about those fast-twitch muscle fibers? Are they great at endurance, or are they great at something else? How fast-twitch muscle fibers work out oxygen? Fast-twitch muscle fibers are known as fast glycolytic or high Type fibers. And for us to understand these fast-twitch fibers, we could almost reverse the facts that we learned about the slow-twitch muscle fibers, because the fast-twitch fibers have fewer capillaries, lower amounts of myoglobin, and fewer mitochondria. So, these fast-twitch fibers are not be known for their endurance or their ability to resist fatigue, but they are larger in diameter and to store more glycogen, which is the storage form of glucose, and contract with more force and velocity, hence the name fast-twitch or fast glycolytic. And let me address that name, fast glycolytic. They're referred to as such because they undergo or typically utilize this process called glycolysis to synthesize their ATP, and glycolysis is the breakdown of glucose. And in the case of doing it anaerobically or without oxygen, we get that 2 ATP that we mentioned and a byproduct, lactic acid. And that only takes about 18 steps. So the benefit of that is we can get those ATP quickly, but eventually we're going to run out, and you know that. When you go for a full-fledged sprint and engage those fast twitch fibers, you know that you can only go so far before you run out of gas or run out of ATPs, so to speak. Aerobic versus anaerobic. But I have to be clear, your slow twitch muscle fibers can also utilize glycolysis. They can also utilize fats to synthesize ATP. And that's a whole video, which is going to be awesome. We'll do that soon. But if they utilize glycolysis, the big difference is there's oxygen. And what will happen is that those end products of glycolysis will get funneled into different pathways in the presence of oxygen, something called the Krebs cycle, which you may have heard about. And then going through this process of oxidative phosphorylation, and that process yields 36 ATP, but it takes about 124 steps. So you can see how much time that takes, and that's why it can only be done in lower intensities of activity like jogging, but jogging or running compared to sprinting. In those jogs, you can go for mile after mile after mile in the presence of oxygen. So again, we're kind of drilling this point home of the pros and cons of oxygen versus not having oxygen, and fast twitch versus slow twitch. But let's finally get to this idea. How do these fast twitch muscle fibers adapt? How you actually turn on your fast twitch fibers, motor units. So in order for your fast twitch muscle fibers to even adapt, you first have to tap into them or engage them. And so let's use this example, moving this adorable 3-pound weight or curling it and engaging my biceps. Let me ask you a question. To move this 3-pound weight, am I engaging all of the muscle fibers of my biceps? And the answer is no, because if every time when I engage my biceps to curl this weight, if I engage every single muscle fiber, it would look more like this. Coming up, and I'd have to dodge it because I'd almost hit myself in the face with the weight. And so we need to be able to modulate the amount of muscle fibers we recruit in order to lift weights appropriately, if you will. And what's really cool is, again, if we go back to this whole muscle that we know is the biceps as our example, yes, it's made up of multiple muscle fibers, but those muscle fibers are organized into groups or units. So just for example's sake, maybe there's a unit of muscle fibers here and another unit there and another unit there, but they're kind of organized and bundled into units or groups called motor units. Now, the textbook definition of a motor unit is the motor neuron on or the nerve cell and the muscle fibers that it controls. Now, something also that's important to note with motor units is they will only contain a certain fiber type. So one motor unit would be slow twitch, and another motor unit would only include fast twitch fibers. You're never going to have motor units that include both fast twitch and slow twitch fibers. So, back to this example with the weight. When I'm lifting this weight, or only when a weak contraction is necessary to lift a light weight, your body going to recruit motor units that only include the slow twitch fibers first. And so, as I increase the weight, say I go from 3 to 10 pounds, I'll need to recruit more muscle fibers, and so therefore motor units. And I may engage a couple more slow twitch containing units, But eventually, when the weight or the intensity increases to a certain point, I'll start recruiting motor units that include the fast twitch fibers. So you can see you have to get to some level of intense to engage those fast twitch fibers, and therefore even get an adaptation. And the two ways that we really increase intensity most of the time is one, we just increase the weight, or two, we increase the speed, say, from going from like a jog to a sprint, or maybe something like an explosive jump. How do fast twitch muscle fibers adapt to exercise? And finally, now that we've tapped into these fibers, how will they specifically adapt physiologically? Well, they tend to adapt by getting larger or undergoing a process called hypertrophy, and that is the muscle fibers that you have will increase in size. And in order for them to increase in size, you need protein to make more protein contractile units. And that's why you hear a lot about people getting protein supplements when trying to build muscle, or at least having enough protein in your diet, and a muscle with a larger cross-sectional area will produce more force. Now they also tend to be able to store more glycogen as an adaptation, and so therefore you have more glucose stores in there to create more ATP, even though you only create few amounts, or those two that we talked about. But you'll at least have more glucose to funnel that into glycolysis. And bringing this all together, I think it's important to discuss that these recruiting different fibers. With exercise, and percentages of fast versus slow fiber types do not exist in a vacuum, and neither do you. The majority of athletic activities or different exercise routines that we participate in tend to engage both fiber types. Granted, you're going to engage one more than the other based on your activity of choice, and we've brought up endurance runners multiple times throughout the video. So yes, an endurance athlete or like a marathon runner is primarily going to engage their slow twitch fibers, but there will be times where they have to increase their speed. Maybe they have to pass somebody during a race, or they really push it towards the end of the race and start recruiting some of those fast twitch fibers. A sprinter, turning that sprint fast twitch dominant, but after maybe doing a recovery run around the track, or a light jog around the track, going to go more into those slow twitch fibers. And what's also interesting to note is that we have percentages of fast versus slow in any given muscle. I gave the example that yes, the postural muscles in general, and all of us have a higher percentage of slow versus fast, so they can hold us up and endure throughout the day. But if you were to take two people and analyze, say, like their gastrocnemius or their calf muscle, I was trying to mix calf and gastroc there, but if you were to analyze that muscle, one person might have a higher percentage of fast versus slow as compared to the other person. But what I still think is so amazing about this, depending on the activity that you like, or tend to participate in, whether it's fast twitch dominant or slow twitch dominant, that will these amazing adaptations that your skeletal muscles can undergo based on this wonderful thing that we call exercise. And luckily we have Jeffrey the Skeleton here to continually 1640. Jeffrey the Skeleton's final message: remind us of our manners, and to remind us to say thank you to you all for watching all of our crazy anatomy videos. It really does help support the channels, and so we really are grateful for that support. Jeffrey also does want to say that you don't get a stomach forever, as he is portraying here, and that you may want to take advantage of that by maybe supplementation like AG1 by Greens. If you're interested in that, go ahead and check out that link in the description below. If you feel the need, like, subscribe, leave some comments with the answers to those quiz questions from earlier, and also let us know about maybe any other future fitness, athletics, or health and wellness videos that you guys might want to see in the future, and we'll see you next time.